Trump stablecoins create a Revelation 13 world. Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. When the Trump administration first came into power, many people were excited to see an executive order banning central bank digital currency. But with the passage of the Genius Act this past July, we have something that really is no different in effect from central bank digital currency. The stablecoins endorsed by the Trump administration lead us directly into a Revelation 13 world, just the same as central bank digital currency. In today's video, we're going to talk about why stablecoins under this law are really no different than central bank digital currency. We're going to talk about why the big banks are fighting against this. We're going to talk about why almost every nation in the world is pushing forward, trying to implement their own digital currency, because there's nuances to this. It's about more than just control over their own citizens. It's about power, a power struggle among the nations themselves. And then, of course, we're going to talk about how all of this relates to Bible prophecy. But first, just a reminder, if you haven't taken advantage of it already, my book, The End Times, A Guide to Bible Prophecy in the Last Days, is available on Amazon as an ebook for only 99 cents. Again, this is the ebook version. The paperback, still $14.95. I wish that I could affordably make that 99 cents, but with printing costs, that's impossible. But guys, thank you very much. Many of you have taken advantage of this already, and this is the #1 bestseller. I'm trying to hover over it with a #1 bestseller in eschatology right now. So this is an overview of the end times. It has almost 1,000 5-star reviews. If you haven't checked this out, I highly recommend you take advantage of this now while you can. This will be 99 cents until midnight on Monday, November 3rd. So there's still a few more days to take advantage of this. If you are part of Kindle Unlimited, you can read this for free along with my other books, Racing Toward Armageddon, Signs of the Second Coming. We have a box set that includes all 3 of these books as well. And then, of course, my book, Coming to Jesus, the ebook version of that is always free, not just on Amazon, but all of the platforms. You can get that on Apple iBooks, Kobo, Google Play, Barnes & Noble Nook, pretty much anywhere ebooks are sold. But guys, make sure to take advantage of this 99-cent offer while you still can. So, why are stablecoins no different from central bank digital currency? And there are differences. There are clear differences. But from the standpoint of freedom and liberty and tyranny, government tyranny over the people, they're really no different from each other. Let's take a look at this right here. So this is put out by the White House back in July after the passage of the Genius Act. It's titled Fact Sheet, President Trump Signs Genius Act into Law. And they go over what they think are the good points of this. And if we scroll down, we'll see this section right here, Combating Illicit Activity in Digital Assets. They say through regulation and registration of stablecoin issuers, along with coordination with the Treasury Department on sanctions enforcement. So these stablecoin issuers are going to be required to coordinate with the United States government. So while they're private issuers, which is different from a central bank digital currency where you have the central bank issuing the digital currency, here you have multiple stablecoin issuers that are private entities, but they're required to coordinate with the U.S. government. And they say to reinforce our national security. Well, how are they going to reinforce the national security? Well, they tell us here. They say the Genius Act explicitly subjects stablecoin issuers to the Bank Secrecy Act, thereby clearly obligating them to establish effective anti-money laundering and sanctions compliance programs with risk assessments, sanction list verification, and customer identification. So what does all that mean? Well, that means compliance with government surveillance measures of the users of the stablecoins. It says this legislation improves the Treasury Department's ability to combat illicit stablecoin activities What are illicit activities? Well, we know all of these things they talk about, terrorism and organized crime. But those illicit activities, as we've seen in, say, Canada a few years ago, could involve, well, a protest, a peaceful protest. Well, we don't like your peaceful protest. It's an illicit activity. But this will help the Treasury Department's ability to combat illicit stablecoin activities by enhancing its sanctions, evasion, and money laundering enforcement capabilities. In other words, there's going to be no escape for those who are using stablecoins. And here's the kicker right here. It says all stablecoin issuers must possess the technical capability to seize, freeze, or burn payment stablecoins when legally required and must comply with lawful orders to do so. In other words, stablecoin issuers must program their stablecoins in advance to give them the capability to freeze your stablecoin, seize it, or just destroy it, burn it, outright eliminate it. So guys, I want you to think about what this means. How is the capability, the stablecoins as outlined in the Genius Act, how does that differ in capability and function from what we read about in Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 through 17, where we read about the mark of the beast and the ability to control who can buy and who can sell? Think about if we've got a world where the currency, the dominant currency is stablecoins. If that's what you're using every day, and they have the ability to seize, freeze, and burn those stablecoin, really, how is it any different from a central bank digital currency? And how is it any different, again, in capability and function from the mark of the beast system? It doesn't mean it is the mark of the beast. Again, that requires the tribulation. It requires the beast, the Antichrist. We don't have those things yet, but we're seeing everything being put in place right now for that. And so let's take a look at this right here from Zero Hedge. So this came out in August. It says, too late, nervous banking lobby fights to change the Genius Act. Why are they trying to change the Genius Act? Well, it says the U.S. banking lobby isn't keen on interest-bearing stablecoins or their supposed challenge to financial systems, but it may be too late to amend these, quote, loopholes in the Genius Act. The Banking Policy Institute, an advocacy group for the banking industry led by J.P. Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon, wrote a letter to Congress last week arguing that stablecoins present a risk to existing credit systems. The Banking Policy Institute urged regulators to close supposed loopholes in the Genius Act, a new law regulating the stablecoin industry in the United States, lest a shift from bank deposits increase lending cost and reduce loans to businesses. We've encountered this previously when talking about the digital euro and proposals for the digital euro. Now, that is a central bank digital currency, and it means that those who hold digital euros would now hold their euros with the central bank directly, bypassing bank deposits, the entire commercial banking system. So that means that deposits that are currently sitting in banks would be withdrawn and sent to the central bank. And the same is true here with stablecoins. They're talking about, well, those that hold their dollars in stablecoins rather than in bank deposits, we're going to see a flight of bank deposits. And so it's, again, in effect, the same as what we're seeing with central bank digital currency. It says the bank lobby holds considerable sway in Washington, and while it may be able to complicate lawmaking, some argue that it's delaying the inevitable, a future denominated in stablecoins. So no doubt we're seeing this is something many people are pushing for, as a future denominated in stablecoins or denominated in central bank digital currency. Sort of like VHS and beta, which one is going to win out? But right now, all the nations of the world are pursuing one of these two options in one way or another. we've also got this as well. This is from Crypto News. It says, Citi executive warns stablecoin interest payments could drain bank deposits like the 1980s crisis. It says Citigroup's Ronit Ghosh warned that stablecoin interest payments could trigger 1980s-style deposit flight from traditional banks. And again, we went over with the digital euro leading to deposit flights in Europe, in the European banking system. This would lead to bank runs. And then, of course, since the European Central Bank cannot go bankrupt, it incentivizes people to move all of their bank deposits out of the commercial banking system and into the digital euro, which is held directly with the central bank, the European Central Bank. So here you're seeing deposit flight as a result of these stable coins that would be held with private entities. Now, they don't have the same monopoly issuer of the currency status that the European Central Bank holds. So you could see a bigger crisis in countries with stable coins than those with the central bank digital currency in the event of bank runs. So keep that in mind in regard to how this may all play out. But it says, according to a Financial Times report, Ghosh drew parallels to the late 1970s and early 1980s when money market funds skyrocketed from $4 billion to $235 billion in 7 years, draining deposits from banks whose deposit rates were tightly regulated. The warning comes as major U.S. banking groups lobby Congress to close what they call a loophole in the Genius Act that allows crypto exchanges and affiliated businesses to offer yields on stablecoins issued by third parties such as Circle and Tether. So what's going on here? Under the Genius Act, the stablecoin issuer itself cannot offer, it's banned from providing interest on those stablecoin holdings. But third parties can offer different incentives. Maybe they don't call it interest, maybe they call it rewards points, whatever it may be. And then, of course, we can see how this entices people into the system, the same as we see when you go to the grocery store and they say, join our rewards program, and you'll get all these special price deals. Well, in reality, you're getting what would be the regular price, but if you don't join their system, you're getting a higher marked up price. And so it incentivizes everybody to go into that system, which, you could argue is nefarious, but not as nefarious as a central bank digital currency or stable coin system where the government is the top of that system and not just the grocery store. But anyway, this goes on and gives us more insight into exactly what's happening here and how big this could be. Because there's a reason outside of simple control over their own citizens that countries all around the world are pushing this. And this gives us insight into why. So this says, the conflict of interest is unfolding as stablecoins are projected to capture $1 trillion in annual payment volume by 2028. So that's less than 3 years from now, and could comprise 10% of the U.S. currency supply, fundamentally altering monetary policy dynamics. Recent research from KeyRock and Bitso also suggests that stablecoins can facilitate payments up to 13 times cheaper than traditional banks while settling in seconds. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent recently tweeted his support for stablecoin adoption, arguing that, quote, stablecoins will expand dollar access for billions across the globe and lead to a surge in demand for U.S. treasuries as backing assets. And guys, this is really a big reason, the number one reason we saw the Genius Act passed, is notice the language they always use. We're going to expand access, right? That means we're going to spread control. That doesn't sound as nice and fluffy, saying we're going to spread control over billions around the world. We're going to expand access for billions across the globe, right? Meaning as people in foreign nations buy these stable coins, which, again, the name in and of itself is an oxymoron because they're attached to you. They're required to be under the Genius Act in the United States. Stable coins must be backed by US dollars or US treasuries. And mostly US treasuries, because that's going to pay interest. So the companies issuing these stable coins, they buy US treasuries and they collect the interest. And maybe, they're not able under law to provide that to those buying the stable coins. So they're going to buy that, collect the interest, and that's one of the ways they remain profitable as a stable coin issuer. But this, as others around the world adopt this, every time they buy one of these stable coins, it's required to be underpinned by a U.S. Treasury purchase. So it creates a floor under the demand for U.S. debt. And that's why they're pushing this, because we've seen over the last decade or more foreign nations saying, we don't want your U.S. debt anymore. Your dollars are losing their purchasing power. You're printing them. You're inflating away this purchasing power. We'd rather hold gold. So what they're trying to do is have their citizens go out and buy these stable coins because they're relatively stable compared to other currencies, their home currencies in many cases. And so they may save in terms of these stable coins, which of course would underpin demand for U.S. treasuries. So that's why the U.S. is really pushing this. But it says, looking forward, the clash between traditional banking and digital assets is intensifying as programmable currency is disrupting old payment systems, while stablecoins' borderless speed and efficiency position them to become a multi-trillion-dollar standard for global settlement. Guys, what does global settlement mean? It means, really, in effect, you have a global currency, a truly global currency that can transact over borders with unprecedented speed. There's no delay in terms of foreigners being able to convert this into their home currency the way there is currently with some foreign exchange rates that you may get. So these are highly efficient. They work 13 times cheaper than traditional banks while settling in seconds. And so there's a great incentive for people to adopt these going forward. And as more and more people adopt these, especially outside of the United States, that becomes a threat to other nations, which is why we're seeing other nations push forward with their own digital versions. That's why one of the reasons we're seeing the European Central Bank push forward with the digital euro and say we got to move fast, because they've stated that their electronic payments that take place within the European Union, they're dominated by U.S. corporations right now. MasterCard and Visa, as well as Google Pay, Apple Pay, and now these U.S. stable coins are entering the mix as well. And that means that the European Central Bank, the more and more EU citizens are using those types of electronic payments, the less control the European Central Bank has over its own monetary policy. And countries where their citizens are using another nation's currency do not have monetary sovereignty. In fact, you could argue they don't have any sovereignty at all. They effectively become colonies of the issuer of the currency their citizens are using, especially if those currencies are electronic currencies that are programmable and could be frozen, seized, or burned upon lawful order from the U.S. government. So that's why we're seeing things like this right here from Cointelegraph. It says Japan to approve first yen-backed stablecoins this fall. It says Japan's FSA is set to approve JPYC as the country's first yen-pegged stablecoin, a move that could reshape demand for Japanese government bonds. Again, they see this as, oh, well, this will demand for our debt if our citizens and others are transacting in stablecoins backed by the yen. So it says, Japan's Financial Services Agency is preparing to approve the issuance of Japanese yen-denominated stablecoins as early as this fall, marking the first time the country will allow a domestic fiat-pegged digital currency. And again, fiat-pegged, so it's an oxymoron to say that stablecoins are stable because fiat currencies are not stable. Just go try to buy anything at the grocery store for the same amount of dollars as it cost you 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. That's not stable. This is anything but stable. It says the approval comes as the global stablecoin market, dominated by dollar-pegged assets like USDT and Circle's USDC, has expanded to more than $286 billion. So somewhere around 99% of the total market value of all the stablecoins on Earth are backed by the US dollar. That's why all these other nations see this as a threat. It says while US dollar stablecoins already have a foothold in Japan, this will be the country's first yen-based offering. In a recent post on X, Okabe, a representative of the JPYC issuing company, said yen stablecoins could have a significant effect on Japan's bond market. He noted that in the United States, leading stablecoin issuers have become major buyers of U.S. Treasuries. That's right, because under the Genius Act, they're required to. You can back them with dollars, but the dollars aren't going to earn you interest the way the Treasuries will. It says holding them as collateral for circulating tokens. A similar trend in Japan, he suggested, could boost demand for Japanese government bonds if JPYC gains widespread adoption. JPYC will likely start buying up Japanese government bonds in large quantities going forward, he wrote. Okabe also noted that countries lagging in stablecoin development risk higher government bond interest rates as they miss out on a new class of institutional demand. He argued that monetary policy considerations are now driving governments, including Japan, to accelerate stablecoin frameworks. Yes, this is exactly what we're seeing and what I talked about with the European Central Bank and why they're pushing so hard to roll out the digital euro as fast as they can, because they risk losing their monetary sovereignty, all of their sovereignty, if EU citizens start using US-denominated stablecoins, US dollar-backed stablecoins, because these can cross borders. These stablecoins, they can be settled cross-border payments the same as they can domestically. And so there's a lot of efficiencies, a lot of incentives that draw people into using these. Again, I would warn against this because you're setting yourself up again to have your stablecoin seized, frozen, or burned upon lawful order by the United States government. Again, making them effectively indistinguishable in capability and function from the same system we read about in Revelation chapter 13. But guys, this is why we're seeing all of these nations push forward for this. And it's why there's a race on to push this out. And then, of course, as they push out these digital options, as they roll out, then they will eliminate paper currency. We've already seen where they're trying to push back on anybody. Oh, well, you can only deposit so much. You can only withdraw so much in cash. Don't want you to be able to do that. Only money launderers, criminals, terrorists, only they use cash. So once all these digital systems are pushed out, these options are pushed out, whether it's central bank digital currency or stablecoin based on the nation you're living in, then they'll eliminate cash so that people have no alternative. And by having no alternative, they'll hold these different types of digital currencies that will underpin demand for the government debt of the countries where these stable coins are issued. And then, of course, as other people in other nations adopt these different stable coins, whether they're yen-backed, dollar-backed, euro-backed, it spreads the power of those countries to other countries. And again, this is why a race is on in other countries. They don't want to be beholden to someone else as a result of their citizens adopting these currencies. So you're going to see more and more laws where they ban citizens from using some of these foreign stable coins. But how easy is that to track and police? That remains to be seen. And so this is what we're seeing. We're seeing this infrastructure being incentivized to be put in place all across the board from a national level, as well as from an adoption level from the citizen point of view of, well, look at these rewards points I get for using these stable coins or using this digital currency, or my cash, my life savings is safer held in central bank digital currency because the central bank can't go bankrupt versus being held in the bank. So we're seeing these incentive structures being put in place that will lead to stablecoins, central bank digital currencies all over the globe. And again, eventually, what this does, it creates a structure, a system that's indistinguishable in capability and function from the mark of the beast system we read about in Revelation chapter 13. And eventually, the Antichrist will come to power during the tribulation, and he won't have to roll out the system. It will already be existent. He'll just flip a switch and turn it on. So guys, we're seeing all of this take place right here in our day and time, along with all the other signs Jesus and the prophets pointed to. It tells us the season in which we're living. Jesus said, when you begin to see all these things, know that I am near. I am right at the door. Jesus is right at the door. So make sure that you're taking advantage of every moment you have to tell other people about the good news of Jesus Christ, that Jesus died on the cross to pay for our sins so that we could be reconciled with God. Guys, that is the good news. And of course, the great news is Jesus, he didn't just die on the cross. He rose again in victory over death and the grave. 3 days later, he's seated at the right hand of the Father right now, preparing a place for those who trust in him. Make sure you trust in Jesus. Make sure that you're sharing the good news of Jesus Christ to as many people as possible. So guys, let me know what you think. Leave your comments below. Remember, you got a few days left to take advantage of this 99-cent deal on the ebook for the end times. Make sure that you take advantage of that. Again, let me know what you think, and God willing, I will see you on Monday.